Now we hop to the other side of the 100th parallel with Dr. Jourdon Bell with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. And Dr. Bell, how has the Texas cotton crop looked this year?
So it has just been an extreme season for the Texas High Plains cotton crop. You know, we started in May and June coming out of this winter drought, very dry conditions, and all of a sudden we received anywhere from 11 to 20 inches of rain across the Texas High Plains. And as we look at that rainfall, you know, it was a blessing because we filled a lot of soil moisture profiles. But then again, when we receive, you know, that much rain, we also wind up with a lot of runoff and rain in playas, regardless of tillage practices and soil management practices. But as we look at those rainfall events, they also came with cool conditions. So much of the cotton that was planned, especially as we focus on like the Panhandle and Amarillo North, that cotton wasn't even planted. We are actually down several 100,000 acres north of Amarillo. And then as we moved into June, it started to warm up, which was great. We had really excellent stands, and with every rainfall event that came, we had a hailstorm. And so it was just really hard to see so many fields hailed out. And so we lost a lot of cotton early this year just because it was either too wet to plant or it was hailed out. And so as we look at the difference between the 2022 crop and the 2023 crop, you know, we just have really reduced production potential in this region. And of course that hurts at the farm level, but we know that's really going to hurt our gens and just the industry that supports cotton production in this region as well. Moving south from Amarillo, we really had an opportunity to, I guess, because we are able to capture more growing degree days down a little farther south. Then when we get to the Lubbock area, a lot of that cotton was still planted later. Producers can still plant later down in that area. And so it became really favorable early on. But then when we hit July and into early August, it was extremely hot. We were looking at periods of 105 degrees plus for days on end. And of course, the winds that came with that really drove the crop water demand, and we wound up with a lot of squares that dropped during that early square period. And so that resulted in a reduced yield potential. And it's been really hard to see a lot of producers who had very good stands early on just south of Amarillo because of ideal planting conditions have failed their crops because of boll numbers. And they just don't have the yield potential out there because of the heat and the lack of rain moving into the summer. So it's been just a season of extreme conditions. And now as we look at irrigated cotton, there's some really nice irrigated cotton out there.
How much is the lack of the moisture from the aquifers, how is that impacting this crop and then future crops?
Oh gosh, that's just been significant. And when we move west of the 100th parallel that you talk about, we know that water is our most limiting factor. And as we have seen the Ogallala decline, producers have very quickly adapted their production practices. And that's one of the reasons we saw cotton expand very rapidly in this production region north of Amarillo and into the Oklahoma Panhandle. We no longer had the irrigation capacity for corn production. And so cotton has allowed producers to extend those well capacities and plant reduced corn acres, and then with more heat and drought tolerant crops like cotton, they can irrigate those less and concentrate more irrigation on maybe some corn that might be there. So cotton's been extremely important in this region to extend the life of our aquifer. But in recent years, what we're seeing a competition for also is forage. And that's something that we've always had the beef cattle industry in this region and always had a really big demand for annual forages and especially silage crops. But as the dairy industry has expanded, we have seen that demand just skyrocket. And of course, when we talk about the dairy industry, they're looking at a totally different forage. Well, I shouldn't say totally different, but the demand, the quantity of forage that is needed is greater per animal, as well as often the quality. They're not just looking for a roughage. They really want a higher quality forage. And so we're seeing even some acres that have been in our grain crops or even in cotton shift to silage crops because those contracts are really strong. And that becomes an important consideration for producers. It is extremely expensive to produce a cotton crop as we look at increasing seed costs, just the inputs in season. And so producers have really stepped back and weighed the cost of production. And of course, they're always looking for where the greatest return is. But cotton, still is a great crop for this region. And we have newer, earlier maturing varieties that are very well adapted and have a really high yield potential. 20 years ago, we wouldn't see producers north of Amarillo making 4 bale or more cotton. And today, under our optimum conditions and with good irrigation management, we can see that happen. And so I think cotton is a really important crop for this region, and especially to help extend the life of the aquifer and the viability of farms moving forward.
You actually answered my question about the technologies, because you're right, there has been major advances in crop technologies as far as seed treatments, as far as varieties, and then also just systems as a whole whenever we look at the cotton crop. Moving forward, do we see any advances in that arena as far as cotton systems?
Yeah, definitely. Of course, the herbicide technology that you speak of is really been key and really allowed producers to incorporate, I think, cotton into grain systems much more easily. And of course, BASF, their new technology, I think is going to even be another game changer. One of the unique things about cotton as we move north of Amarillo is that sometimes we don't have the insect pressure that cotton producers in southern parts of Texas might have, or even in other cotton states. And so that has really been beneficial.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Jourdon Bell with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, for going on with us to talk about the northern Texas cotton crop.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me.